Of course, the Skull Knight is one of the most mysterious and intriguing characters in the entire manga of Berserk, but more than just being that extremely sexy Calcium Chan that we know him as, he is also a certified badass and has proven this many different times throughout the course of the entire manga. I'm about to lay out to you guys 10 times that Skull Knight proved he was that guy.
You're not that guy, pal. Trust me. You're not that guy.
Okay.
Okay?
Are you?
Absolutely.
Now, this is obviously a subjective list, and there are much more than just 10 different events that showcase Skull Knight's skills, but these are just the top 10 to me that just kind of prove that Skull Knight was exactly as cool as his design showcased him to be, with all of his strength, ingenuity, intelligence, intent, and just the history of the things that we learn about him as time goes on. Now, obviously, this video is going to include spoilers for Berserk because Skull Knight is meant to be a mysterious character, and we learn a lot more about him as the story goes on, and still to this day, there is a ton of stuff about Skull Knight that we don't fully know and understand. But this video is going to include facts all the way up to the current chapters of Berserk, so if you haven't read all the way up to the newest chapters of Fantasia, I would definitely say this is probably not the video for you if you care about spoilers. But at my number 10, I'm going to put the moment where Skull Knight pulls up on Femto on top of Ganishka and almost cuts him in half. Now, this is number 10 simply because Skull Knight did not succeed in this instant, but it was not his fault. This was the first time that Skull Knight was attempting to use the Sword of Actuation against a God Hand member, which was the very reason for its creation. The entire intent behind Skull Knight creating this sword was to attack and destroy the God Hand, and this was his first opportunity to do so. He probably didn't know that Femto was going to be able to stop a dimension-cutting blade in mid-air and redirect it. So yes, this is also technically an L that Skull Knight took. However, just the fact that Skull Knight waited for the perfect opportunity for Femto to basically be almost by himself, Zod is kind of not paying attention, then all of a sudden he just cuts a rift in space-time, and then we have probably the most iconic and one of the best drawn images of the entire Berserk manga, which is saying a lot since it's Kentaro Miura's art, and then just Skull Knight having this perfect opportunity to slay Femto. Zod can't get there in time. It's a moment of pure intensity, and this is also a moment where it's the first time that we saw Skull Knight for, dozens upon dozens of chapters, and I always love how you kind of go so long without Skull Knight, you forget about him a little bit, and then he just makes such a grand, epic entrance like this that you literally just can never forget it. Now, my number 9 is going to be the moment where he saves Luca during the Conviction arc. Now, look, even though I ship Luca with Jerome, and she did break up with him, but my man Jerome literally quit his entire job just to help Luca out, the prostitute with the heart of gold that won him over, and, maybe Jerome might have been, cheating on his wife. I don't know what's going on there. I ship them together. However, a lot of people ship Skull Knight and Luca together, and it's mostly because of this moment. Luca starts to fall off of the tower. Skull Knight, again, comes out of nowhere, grabs her, puts her on the back of his skull horse, and all of a sudden there is a little moment between the two of them. Now, this moment is badass because Skull Knight, his intentions are still a little bit unclear within the manga. He's not a pure evil character, and he's not a pure good character. He's a character that lives basically by the idea of vengeance, wanting to destroy the God Hand. He kind of has lost all of his human emotions at this point, and he's kind of going through the motions very robotically, just wanting one overall objective goal. But this particular moment of saving Luca is an interesting one because he didn't necessarily have to save Luca, unless there is some moment in the future where Luca might play a part in causality that we don't know about, which could be possible. It could also be possible that Luca kind of was reminiscent and reminded him of his lost love, and so he had a natural instinct to protect her. Or it could just be that he saw a woman falling and just decided to save her. We don't really know the actual 100% reason as to why he saved Luca, but the fact that Skull Knight, who didn't have to do this at all, went out of his way to save Luca and actually benefited the story in many different ways, I think that this is definitely a moment that deserves to be on the top 10 list. At the number 8 spot is going to be kind of in general, and this is the many different fights that Skull Knight has had with motherfucking Zod. Now, if you know anything about Berserk and motherfucking Zod, it's that he is one of the most powerful apostles to exist. This guy is a warmongering bastard that has fought in tons of different wars and battles throughout time, through 300 some years of just going around fighting, living for the thrill of the fight, and the only person to fight him to a stalemate over and over and over again, even more than Guts, is Skull Knight himself. And in fact, in many instances, it is alluded to that Skull Knight kind of defeats Zod. He chops off his arm. You know, he did manage to get around Zod in order to enter the Eclipse, so he must have gotten through him in some way, shape, or form. Just the fact that Skull Knight is able to fight so many different battles with Zod, and even if Zod is still alive, Skull Knight just keeps on going, and that is definitely worthy of being on the list. In the number 7 spot is when Skull Knight first meets Guts. This is also his first appearance in the manga in its entirety. Guts is just chilling out in front of the fire, then all of a sudden he feels this ominous force. Feels similar to how he felt against Zod. Could Skull Knight be an apostle? At this point in the story, we really didn't know. Skull Knight just comes out and just starts laying down facts. He just starts telling Guts all about his life. Hey, yeah, you were born from a corpse. You probably shouldn't exist. You're going to exist outside the walls of causality. Also, I need to tell you that in a year's time, there's going to be a rain of blood that falls upon you, and the only thing that you can do is struggle, endure, and contend, and try not to die. Peace out. And then he just leaves for a year. Badass. The number 6 spot is going to be the moment during the Golden Age arc where Skull Knight shows up to save Rickert from the Count and Rosine, and I want you to think about this moment for a minute. We have seen Guts fight both the Count and Rosine, and in both fights, Guts almost fucking dies. The Count absolutely demolishes Guts for a good amount of time. Rosine shoves her stinger through Guts's arm, through his face. He breaks himself to the brim trying to defeat Rosine. It was the most intense fight in all of Berserk, pretty much. And we have this moment where Rosine and the Count are here and they're waiting for the eclipse to happen, but they get a little impatient, so they start killing all these Band of the Hawk members. Skull Knight just shows up and tells them to get the fuck away. And they do. Now, this is the Count and Rosine together. And both of them thought it would be better for them to not fight the Skull Knight in this moment. Rosine even had all of her pseudo-apostle bugmen creature things. So the fact that Skull Knight was able to intimidate away both of them at the same time just shows the level of fear and respect that apostles know Skull Knight to have. Like, he is infamous within their world, and they knew probably they weren't going to come out of this unscathed. My number 5 spot might be a little bit controversial because it still is not 100% confirmed that Skull Knight as a human was King Geyserich. I know it's a pretty much a foregone conclusion. I would say myself it's like 95 to 99% confirmed at this point. But we still haven't had Skull Knight say, I am King Geyserich. So there is still that kind of variation of what that could possibly mean if there's some kind of twist that's waiting to happen. But I think that most of us assume, yes, he was King Geyserich. And going along with that, I'm going to include feats that Skull Knight had even as a human before he was the Skull Knight. And King Geyserich conquered the whole fucking world. He united everybody, every nation, every group of human all together under one banner and essentially was like the king of Earth. Like, I always picture human Geyserich as King Conan from the end of the movie, like this image of him sitting in the throne. That was King Geyserich, dude. He conquered the whole freaking world. He's the man. My number 4 spot also involves the human King Geyserich. Now, we do know that he was the former wearer of the Berserker armor before Guts inherited it. That's the reason why it had the skull helmet beforehand. And not only was he the last person to wear the Berserker armor before Guts, but he wore the Berserker armor to its full capacity. And that means that that was how he died. The Skull Knight literally went into such a rage over the assumed, sacrifice and death of the woman that he was in love with. She died in his arms, assumingly, and he's looking at whatever god hand existed at that time, probably looking at his kingdom falling to ashes, and he let that rage overtake him. And yes, overall, this may be a negative because, he was killed and now he is kind of soulless, just a blank slate going around looking for vengeance. However, just the fact that this man went to his full capacity in a berserker rage, went crazy. Who knows how many apostles he killed? Who knows? Hey, some people say that he killed the former God Hand. I don't buy into that theory, but hey, if you're in a massive berserker rage, you're not feeling pain, you're not feeling your bones break, you're just going ham. Hey, it's absolutely possible, man. And the fact that Skull Knight kind of saw the death of his loved one and pushed himself to the brink and literally let the berserker armor take him over, even though it's ultimately a negative, it still shows that he was that guy. And my number 3 is Skull Knight's creation of the Behelit sword, or the Sword of Actuation. Now, my running theory is that Skull Knight did not kill the former God Hand because Skull Knight created the Behelit sword specifically for the intention of killing the God Hand. And in the story during the Millennium Empire arc, Skull Knight mentions that this is the first time that he ever used the sword. And I also have the theory that maybe the fact that he used it to escape Qlipoth perhaps weakened it a bit, and that's why it didn't work against Femto, but that's all headcanon. Let's not get into that. The real point is this man went around the world looking for Behelits, swallowing them, probably using his own energy and intent of what he wanted to use them for to repurpose them to like shove a whole fucking sword down his throat, fuse Behelits to it, harness the power of the Behelits to slice through dimensions to use at his whim. That is one of the coolest attacks and weapons in the entire franchise, and Skull Knight did it by shoving a sword down his throat and swallowing Behelits like his morning breakfast eggs. This guy's a badass. My number 2 is during the same sequence, during the Qlipoth moment where Guts is being attacked and tortured by Slann. Skull Knight enters, and this man, Skull Knight, to her face, looks directly at a God Hand and calls her a whore princess of the Uterine Sea.
Be gone, fuck!
My man has the greatest diss in the entire manga, and he says it with a straight, well, he's always got a straight face, but look at this man's face. Calling something as powerful and controlling as the God Hand a whore princess to her face. My man, Skull Knight. And number 1, I don't think it's any surprise that this was going to be the moment. Skull Knight breaks into the motherfucking eclipse, somehow getting around Zod, entering the interstice, going deep through the layers of the astral world, coming right up on Void instantly without any hesitation, going to attack him. Yes, it doesn't work, but hey, my man wasted no time. He then saw Guts and Casca, and again, for whatever reason he saved them, whether it's because Guts is going to help him in his goal, whether it's to interrupt the flow of time and causality and make something change, whether or not he felt some kind of deep-seated sympathy or just kind of instinct to save them. Whatever reason that you want to go with, that you want to believe that Skull Knight saved Guts and Casca for, the fact of the matter is, he did it. My man ran down, rushed through the God Hand, killed about like a dozen apostles, and then avoided Femto's attack, grabbed both Guts and Casca, ran back up to the interstice, separating dimension point eclipse thing. I don't know what he did. Escaped, faced down Zod again, and was like, no, we're not doing our fight right now. Hands Guts and Casca to Rickert, says, hey, go heal these people. Use the elf dust, as if, he just knows what that is. Obviously, now that we know his story, he knows what it is. But, like, at the time, it was like, what? And then just afterwards, he just tells Guts, oh, yeah, so this is going to be your life now, by the way. You're branded, and everything's going to try to kill you. The risk that Skull Knight took, and probably was waiting around specifically for the moment of the eclipse. We know that's why, that Skull Knight didn't try to stop the eclipse, is because he needed the eclipse to happen so that he could enter the astral world to try to kill the God Hand. He got there a little late because Zod was holding him up, but he still, to an extent, tried to do what he was going to do. He went in, tried to attack the God Hand, didn't work, understood what he needed to do, saved Guts and Casca, and got them out of there. And so, without the Skull Knight, Guts and Casca would be dead. So anyways, guys, even though there are lots of other moments in the manga where Skull Knight shows that he's an absolute badass, these are my top 10 moments that I think fully solidify that he is, without a doubt, one of the coolest characters in the entire manga. So what do you guys think about my top 10 list? What other moments of the Skull Knight would you include, or how would you rank the Skull Knight's feats and moments if you had to? Anyways, guys, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and a comment because it will help it out in the algorithm. I would appreciate it. And if you want to support the channel on a deeper level, I do have channel memberships turned on down below, Patreon, merch store, and all the social media links where you can follow me. Other than that, guys, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you next time.